In this After Effects tutorial, we're going to cover some of the preferences here in After Effects. Let's get to it. Before I take you over the preferences, let's go ahead and create a composition. And I'm just going to call it Preferences. And there it is. Now I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, General. And if you are on a Mac, it's going to be under After Effects, Preferences, General. And of course, this will open the Preferences panel. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll go through some. So here we go. Under General, which is, if we go down the list, is the first one. The path, point, and handle size, I can change that. So what does that mean? Path, point, and handle size. Well, let's have a path. And we could have a motion path. So I'm just going to have a little rectangle here. And I'm going to keyframe it. I get it. We have not gone over keyframing, but that's okay. We will go. And now we have a path. Now if I go to Preferences again, I will change this value and you'll see how it changes the display. Notice that it gives me a max of 15. Click OK. See how much bigger they are? See these control points here? See these keyframes here, right? It's much, much larger. So that's what that preference does, and how large you want it is completely up to you. So I'll go back to Preferences General, and I'll go back to what I had here, which is 5. I can tell it to show tooltips or not. I like tooltips. Tooltips is when you hover on top of something, and then a little description of what that something is comes up. I like that. I can create layers at the composition start point or not. For example, if I tell it no, and I click OK, see where my playhead is? I'm going to create a new layer there. There you go. Do you see how that layer starts there? Well, if I delete that layer, I go back to the preferences and I tell it to create layers at the composition start point. I'm going to click OK. Playhead in the same place. Boom. See how now that layer starts at the beginning? So what behavior you want is completely up to you. So I'm going to delete that and go back to the preferences. And I'm just telling you pretty much what some of the preferences are, but quite frankly, I'm not really going to go over all of them because that would make this video unnecessarily long and boring. But there are some that I do want to tell you. This one, default spatial interpolation to linear. I really like it, Bezier. If you look at this animation, and when the preferences are open, I can't click on anything, so I'm just going to close. If you look at this animation, do you see how these are straight lines? I prefer having the little curve, so I'm going to delete those keyframes. I'm going to change the preference. So Edit, Preferences General, and I'm going to deselect that preference. So I'm just going to go back here and I had already deselected it. So see how it's not going to default spatial interpolation to linear? We have a whole lesson on spatial interpolation. So I'm just going to keyframe here and now move here and now move here. Look at the curve. I didn't make that curve. After Effects did, and it did it because I changed the preference. So, there are many other things like that. So After Effects Preferences, General, that's on the Mac. And there is one more here under General that I want to show you. But on your own, go through them and see what they do. It's actually kind of cool. And it's this one, Center Anchor Point in New Shape Layers. So I like to have the anchor point of the shape layer to be exactly in the middle of the shape layer, not in the middle of the composition. So by default, it's going to be in the middle of the composition, the viewable area, but I don't want that. I want it to be in the middle of the shape layer. So with that selected, I'm going to click OK. I'm going to delete that layer because I no longer need it. And I'm going to draw, say, an oval here. My mouse button is still down. look at the oval and look at the anchor point. Do you see how the anchor point is in the middle of the viewable area? Because I changed the preference, as soon as I release the mouse button, that anchor point goes in the middle of that shape layer and it won't stay in the middle of the composition. So to me, that saves me a lot of time. So those are preferences that I do change. Let's go through some others. Edit, preferences, general. We can use the system color picker. There can be dynamic link with After Effects. I can play a sound when the render finishes or not. On footage layer opens in the layer panel. I can change that to whatever. If we go to previews, we can change some things in here, including looking at the GPU information and what we have available. Notice that in this Dell 5770, I have an NVIDIA RTX A3000 GPU with 12 gigabytes of RAM. So it's a pretty respectable card, and that accelerates things tremendously for me. Moving on, if we go to display, you can change this to show no motion path, to show all of the keyframes, to show no more than 5 keyframes, or the default, which is to show me 15 seconds out of keyframes. You can say, hey, you know what? Why wouldn't I want to see all of them? So select them all. Well, that is taking system resources that you can use for other things that, quite frankly, I mean, at least for me, it's not necessary for me to show these things. So, I'm just saying. You can disable, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to what I have, which is 15 seconds. That's the default. You can disable the thumbnails in the project panel. You can show rendering progress. All of these things, pretty self-explanatory. Under import, you can have still footage be the length of the composition, or you can give it a preset duration, say 5 seconds, 4 seconds, whatever it is that you want. If something doesn't have a time base, in other words, something is not going at any frames per second, kind of like a hyperlapse or whatever, you can tell it in here how fast by default you want it to be. You can change this later on, interpreting the footage, blah, blah, blah. But this is from the get-go. As soon as you import that series of stills as a sequence, what do you want the frames per second to be? You can enable hardware accelerated decoding or not. Notice that it says requires restart. You're going to have to restart the app if you change this. And everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Under output, you can segment or not segment sequences, grids and guides. Which color do you want? And in fact, the proportional grid, I like to have it as in 3 by 3. And if I go now and show the proportional grid, it gives me a perfect rule of thirds, because I'm dividing this in 3 by 3. I'm dividing the screen in 9 places. And you can change the color of these and so forth, so forth. It's the same with the others. You can change the style, you can change the guides colors and all of that good stuff. Labels, you can change the colors. If you don't like the default colors, you can change them to whatever you want. Just go in here in the preferences and change them. The media and disk cache, which is the next one, is kind of important, because sometimes, we see that our system is like, wait a minute, how come I have no hard drive left and all of that? It's because Adobe has to create all of these auxiliary or ancillary files to help us with our projects, and they have to go somewhere. So this is where they are going. This is the default. I haven't changed it. A lot of people change this to an external SSD drive, but you can do whatever you want. All I'm telling you is that you can empty this by clicking here. If things become too much, you're running out of room, or if your system is misbehaving, crashing, whatever, you can empty those by either going to that, say, users, Luisa, app data, local temp. You can go there and manually delete them, or you can delete them from here. The same with a conformed media cache, and I'm just going to clean the database and the cache. And this cleans everything except for the current project, but in the current project I have nothing, so it doesn't really matter. So this is a quick and easy way that you have to clean up the cache. Again, most people are going to choose an external SSD drive locally connected to your system through a fast connector, USB-C, FireWire, whatever. Video previews, you can enable Mercury Transmit so that you can view the display on a different monitor. You can change appearance. You can make the brightness of the interface higher, lower. You can affect label colors or not. You can change the color and the brightness of interactive controls and so forth, so forth. So this is just what the brightness of the interface is going to be. You can load a template automatically on a new project. So if you choose this, it's going to say, hey, which project do you want to choose? So I don't want to do that, so I'm going to leave it deselected. Autosave is important. It's going to save it whether you like it or not. And I have mine set to the default, which is every 20 minutes, and I have a maximum project version of 5. So even if my system crashes, the most I would lose is 20 minutes worth of work. It beats losing 4 hours, You can change this to whatever you want. If you change this to save every 5 minutes with 50 project versions or whatever, know that that also takes some of your system resources, your hardware space, and depending on how large your projects are, and generally speaking, they're not very large, but sometimes they are, that's going to take a while, and saving every 5 minutes may be a little too much. Memory and performance. Notice I have 64 gigabytes of RAM, and I'm leaving 6 for other applications. I can change this, I can change it to more. I can say, hey, let's leave 40 for other applications, but then that doesn't leave much for the Adobe applications, and that's for all of them: After Effects, Premiere, Prelude. I don't use Prelude anymore, but whatever, Media Encoder, Photoshop, and Audition. And you can click here to show memory usage, so, not too bad. And you can enable multi-frame rendering or not. Audio hardware, how do you want to get the sound out? And I have a Scarlett a box connected that is connected to speakers. I could choose the Scarlett, but I'm going to leave it at the default. So mine is just, the Intel is the built-in speakers from the laptop. Audio output mapping. Again, I'm going to the system default. I don't have to, but I'm going to leave it like that. Sync settings, so you can clear the user profile. So you can sign in with your own account on somebody else's system. And what that does is that if you save things like preferences, keyboard shortcuts, there's some things that you can save to your cloud account, to your account, they will sync onto this system. And then when you log out, hey, delete everything because, you don't want to leave your stuff on somebody else's system. So you can synchronize the preferences, the keyboard shortcuts, compositions, and all of that. So everything you can just synchronize. Oh, well, any of these you can synchronize. This has to do with the fonts, how you want the preview size of the font to be. I'm going to leave it at small because I don't need it to be any larger. And how many recent fonts is going to display. You can tell it, hey, don't warn me if I have missing fonts. Or you can say, hey, yeah, do warn me. If there's missing fonts, I need to know. So it's up to you whether you want to check this or not. I leave it unchecked. Scripting and expressions. Generally speaking, if you're installing a third-party plugin, an extension of some kind, then you have to check that. So this is about the only one in here that I do change other than the general ones. The general ones I do change, but in here in scripting and expressions, I do have to allow scripts to write files and access network. I have to, otherwise there are some plugins that I can't use, and there are some plugins that quite frankly cost next to nothing, and save you so much time that it would be criminal if I don't show it to you. Finally, in 3D, we can say, hey, how do you want to change the camera navigation? How do you want to do the camera navigation, the dolly, and et cetera, et cetera. So we haven't talked about 3D. I'm not going to go over this right now. Finally, notifications, automatically enable notifications when you add a composition or not, and I'm going to leave the default. So those are pretty much the preferences that we have. And if you ever delete the preferences in After Effects for whatever reason, you're going to have to go in here and redo these unless you have synced them, in which case sync them again. So I'm just going to click OK because I want to preserve those changes that I made under General. And this brings me to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.